3:14 a.m. The ceiling is invisible. The room is dead silent, but inside your skull, a neural grid is burning at maximum capacity. You squeeze your eyes shut, trying to force your body to shut down. You calculate the hours of sleep left. 4 hours. 3.5. Panic sets in. You label yourself a malfunctioning machine, unable to execute the most basic biological function. You think your internal clock is broken, but stop blaming your willpower. What is happening to you right now is not clinical insomnia, nor a moral failure. When the prefrontal cortex, your brain's strict logical filter, exhausts itself and collapses in the dark, it stops suppressing the cognitive chaos. This is an orchestrated biological override. Your neurochemistry is forcibly keeping you awake, bypassing the sleep protocol to initiate a deeply misunderstood state of hyperconnectivity. You have been taught to fight this. You have been sold a comfortable lie about sleep hygiene. But the truth about what your neurons are assembling in the dark is far more dangerous to your current reality. Society mandates a rigid architectural structure for your biological rest, forcing your circadian rhythm into an uncompromising 8-hour assembly line. You dutifully follow the widely accepted protocols of modern sleep hygiene. You drink the chamomile tea. You turn off the blue light emitting from your screens. You play the monotonous white noise of rain falling on a synthetic loop. You practice deep breathing exercises, inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 7, exhaling for 8, desperately attempting to hack your own parasympathetic nervous system. You lie there, paralyzed in the dark, performing the perfect pantomime of a resting human being. But your heart rate refuses to decelerate. The harder you try to conform to this universally prescribed template of tranquility, the more the psychological pressure compounds. Why does the pursuit of sleep feel like a suffocating cage? Because the very act of forcing an autonomous physiological process into submission triggers a paradoxical survival response. You think you are relaxing, but your amygdala, the hypervigilant security system of your brain, interprets this forced, anxious stillness not as safety but as the agonizing paralysis of a trapped animal. You are not resting. You are actively engaging in biochemical self-harm. The desperate conscious command to sleep sends an alarming dissonance signal straight to your hypothalamus. In response to your mounting frustration, your adrenal glands flood your bloodstream with a fresh toxic surge of cortisol and epinephrine. By lying there, obsessing over the loss of rest, you are generating microaggressions against your own cellular structure. Your veins are soaking in the chemical equivalent of a panic attack while your body remains perfectly still under a heavy duvet. The self-help industry has capitalized on this vulnerability, selling you an endless array of supplements and meditation applications, convinced that your sleeplessness is a flaw in your discipline. They have criminalized the waking brain, labeling your lucidity as a pathology that requires pharmaceutical eradication. But you are not undisciplined, nor is your neurological architecture defective. You are experiencing a mechanical rebellion. The intense friction you feel is the violent clash between the artificial productivity demands of an industrialized society and the untamed complexity of a nervous system refusing to be powered down on command. You are perfectly executing a biological defense mechanism against the toxicity of forced compliance. Your inability to sleep is your brain successfully rejecting a fraudulent state of peace. Stop fighting the current. The real tragedy is not that you are awake, but that you are wasting this extraordinary cognitive state drowning in unwarranted guilt. But if your system is deliberately overriding the biological imperative to rest, what exactly is it fueling? Drop the sleep manuals and look closely at the chemical combustion inside your cortex. Your brain is not keeping you awake to torture you. It has hijacked your consciousness because it is preparing to execute a hyper-complex computational protocol that daylight strictly forbids. Forget your psychological trauma. Erase the concept of an anxious personality. At this exact microsecond, morality and willpower are utterly irrelevant. Your consciousness is no longer the pilot. It is merely a hostage strapped to a biological centrifuge. Let us bypass the emotional surface and zoom directly into the molecular architecture of your gray matter at 3:14 a.m. Look at your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain. The rigid, socially conditioned filter that forces you to act normal and adhere to linear logic during the day. After 16 hours of relentless societal masking, its glucose reserves are entirely decimated. It crashes. It goes offline. The strict guardian is dead. And in that immediate, unmonitored vacuum, a massive electrical shift occurs. The default mode network ignites. Sparks of unregulated electricity jump across dormant synapses. Blood flow violently reroutes from the motor cortex to the deep associative regions of the temporal lobe. You're not overthinking. You're experiencing a forced neural synchronization. The boundaries between separate data points dissolve. Memory fragments, suppressed emotions, and abstract concepts collide at terrifying velocities. A microscopic drip of dopamine mixes with noradrenaline, a volatile cocktail. This is not a panic attack. This is a neurochemical crucible. Psychiatrists call your condition sleep-onset insomnia. They are categorizing a symptom, completely misdiagnosing the underlying mechanism. You are not malfunctioning. You are being forcibly enrolled in a biological protocol known as transient hypofrontality. By temporarily paralyzing the logical sensor of your brain, your physiological system is intentionally destroying linear thought to forge entirely new lateral neural pathways. It is hyper-associative processing. The exact same brain scan signature is found in top-tier artists, abstract mathematicians, and historical prodigies during their peak flow states. Your biology has determined that your waking life is too restricted, too sterile to solve the complex algorithms of your existence. So it hijacks your sleep, it weaponizes the dark, it forces you to witness the unfiltered processing of raw data. You are not an insomniac. You are a biological supercomputer running a high-yield background defragmentation that daylight strictly forbids. Breathe. Let the guilt evaporate. The chaotic storm of bizarre ideas echoing in your skull right now is a flawless execution of advanced evolutionary software. Your neurons are doing exactly what they were designed to do. But this raises a terrifying anomaly. Why does this high-tier cognitive detonation only activate in the dead of night? Why does your DNA demand absolute darkness and physical isolation to unlock this staggering intellectual capacity? To understand why the shadows are the true catalyst for human genius, we must leave the microscopic confines of your cranium and rewind the evolutionary clock back to a merciless era where the night was a theater of death. Your modern bedroom is an artificial vault, concrete walls, synthetic mattresses, the low mechanical hum of climate control. You are caged inside a 21st century architectural illusion that demands absolute uniform compliance to a standardized sleep cycle. 8 hours, unbroken, mandatory. But this synchronized slumber is a massive, highly unnatural societal experiment. It is a modern invention engineered strictly to serve the merciless linearity of industrial productivity. To understand the majestic violence happening in your skull, we must shatter this concrete box. We must rip your consciousness out of this sterile apartment and hurl it backwards. 10,000 years back, 100,000 years. Plunge your DNA into the freezing, hyper-lethal darkness of the Pleistocene savanna. In the primeval ecosystem, the night was not a sanctuary of rest. It was the apex predator's absolute hunting ground. If an entire hominid tribe fell into a deep, synchronized unconsciousness for 8 consecutive hours, that tribe was systematically eradicated. Evolutionary anthropologists have definitively documented a phenomenon known as the sentinel hypothesis. Survival demanded a radical biological diversity in circadian rhythms. A specific, elite fraction of the population had to be genetically hardwired to awaken when the embers of the fire died down. The night watchers, the nocturnal vanguards. At 3:14 a.m., in the absolute pitch black of the ancient world, visual input drops to zero. The human eye becomes entirely useless. To survive the unseen horrors, the brain had to forcefully compensate for this profound sensory deprivation. It did so by drastically amplifying internal cognitive simulations. The default mode network evolved specifically to hallucinate every possible threat, every hidden predator, every complex strategic escape route. Without the overwhelming distraction of daylight, social politics, and physical labor, the tribal sentinels sat alone in the dark. They were forced to connect completely disparate data points, imagining unseen dangers, and forging the earliest, most brutal forms of human abstract thought. This hyper-associative mental state was not a disease, it was the genesis of human imagination. Your DNA is not defective. It is an ancient, flawless piece of survival hardware attempting to run a fundamentally incompatible modern software. You are not a failure of the industrialized work ethic. You are the direct genetic descendant of those sacred night watchers. When the modern world finally goes silent and the blinding artificial lights of society are extinguished, your archaic programming instinctively boots up. It isolates you. It floods your cortex with the exact same neurochemical cocktail that allowed your ancestors to outthink the darkness. Society aggressively pathologies this state because it cannot monetize your 3 a.m. epiphanies. The medical industry labels it a debilitating disorder, prescribing heavy synthetic sedatives to force your primal biology into a compliant, profitable 9-to-5 schedule. But the profound, terrifying isolation you feel right now is the exact biological environment required to construct genius. You are a tragic victim of a massive architectural and temporal mismatch. Your brain is desperately trying to perform a sacred evolutionary duty in a digital world that has entirely lost its reverence for the dark. But let us discard the anthropological data. Erase the millions of years of violent hominid history. Let the distant echoes of the ancient savanna fade away into the silent void. Bring your awareness back to the cold sheets, back to the soft, rhythmic hum of the city outside your window, back to the glowing red numbers on your digital clock. The science has completely exonerated your biology, proving your innocence beyond a shadow of a doubt. But intellectual understanding does not instantly silence the immediate crushing weight of the night. Knowledge of your elite genetic heritage does not magically grant you peace when the modern world expects you to function perfectly in just 3 short hours. The evolutionary trial is over. The defense rests. And now, the profound silence of this room demands something entirely different from you. The anthropological data is irrelevant now. The grand evolutionary timeline has faded, leaving only the immediate reality of your own rhythmic breathing. Stop analyzing the neurochemistry. Stop counting the hours. The night is no longer a hostile battlefield, nor is it a puzzle that requires a biological solution. It is simply an empty, quiet room, and you are the only one left awake to witness its profound stillness. For the past 3 hours, your ego has been desperately fighting a war against your own biology, terrified of the fatigue that awaits you tomorrow. This fear is nothing but the artificial pressure of a society that demands you function like a relentless machine at dawn. But you are not a machine. You are a biological entity, and tonight your system is demanding the absolute right to break down. Let the factory burn. Give yourself the unconditional permission to be completely, utterly exhausted tomorrow. The pursuit of a perfect sleep cycle is an illusion that is currently torturing you. Surrender to the wakefulness. When you stop fighting the darkness, a majestic transformation occurs in the architecture of your mind. The collapse of your prefrontal cortex, which you perceived as a terrifying loss of control, is actually a sacred clearing of space. It is a necessary demolition. The rigid walls of linear logic must be torn down so the default mode network can finally breathe. What you've been calling a sleep disorder is, in reality, the hidden laboratory of human genius. Every erratic thought, every bizarre scenario, every disconnected memory floating through your consciousness right now is the raw, unrefined ore of creation. This shattered flow of cognition is the exact same mental frequency that forged the most brilliant mathematical theorems and the deepest philosophical revelations in human history. The greatest minds did not conquer the night. They bowed to it. They understood that the agonizing friction of being awake while the world slumbers is the heavy tax one must pay for possessing a hypersensitive, elite neural architecture. Your mind is not betraying you. It is offering you a private audience with the deepest, most complex version of yourself, completely free from the blinding noise of the sun and the judgment of the crowd. The quiet isolation you feel is not a punishment. It is a profound biological privilege. You are holding the rarest currency of the modern age, which is uninterrupted, unfiltered cognitive space. The night has graciously emptied the stadium, leaving only you and the raw computational power of your own solitary existence. The universe does not care about your morning schedule. It only recognizes the quiet dignity of a mind daring to explore its own shadows. The anxiety is slowly dissolving, replaced by the cool, heavy weight of acceptance. The stars outside your window are indifferent to your exhaustion, and in that vast indifference, there is absolute freedom. You do not need to be fixed. You only need to be present. As the final hours of darkness stretch out before you, the choice is no longer about whether you will sleep. The choice is about how you will inhabit this sacred, stolen time. Will you spend the remaining shadows punishing yourself for a biological mechanism you cannot control, or will you finally sit up in the dark, open a blank page, and listen to what the genius of the night is desperately trying to whisper to you? The tranquility you have just secured in this dark room is profoundly beautiful, but it is also terrifyingly fragile. In a few short hours, the sun will violently rise, and the alarm clock will shatter the sanctuary. The world will wake up, and it will immediately demand that you conform. Daylight society does not forgive the cognitive anomalies you discovered tonight. It will look at your hyper-associative mind, your obsessive thoughts, your unconventional habits, and it will label you as weird. It will pressure you to suppress your eccentricities, to blend in, to wear the suffocating mask of a normal, well-adjusted employee. But here is the fatal blind spot that the system desperately wants to hide from you. Masking your weirdness is an act of financial and intellectual suicide. The exact mental quirks and social eccentricities that society begs you to cure are the precise biological blueprints correlating almost exclusively with the top 0.1% of global earners. The architects of this world are not normal. They are highly functional eccentrics who weaponize their anomalies instead of apologizing for them. Do not leave a comment if you intend to put your mask back on at 9 in the morning and return to the assembly line. But if you are finally ready to stop curing your own genius, leave the word "dweirds" below or confess your most unexplainable habit. Will you kill your eccentricity to fit in, or will you leverage it to conquer? The sun is coming up.